my friends, and welcome back to Art a la Carte. The artwork I am working on in this piece is for the current round of the YouTube Artist Collective. To recap, the YouTube Artist Collective is a group of artists here on YouTube who create art-based videos, and every few months you guys choose a theme for us to create a piece based on, and then we all just do that. There are set official members to the YouTube Artist Collective, but we also have guest members, and of course anyone is welcome to join in these themes unofficially and share your artwork. I love seeing the pieces that you create for the different themes. This one I'm a little bit nervous about because the theme is phobia, and it can be taken in a really creepy way. Phobia is a fear of something. Yeah, that was the first hurdle in this. Not that I didn't want to address fears and things like that, but I didn't want to create a piece that just embodied fear. I wanted to create a piece that I could hang up on my wall and not be freaked out every time I saw it. I have an extremely overactive imagination, and with that comes a lot of irrational fears. So it wasn't that I couldn't come up with an idea. I was just trying to come up with an idea that didn't freak me out. In fact, the first idea that I had, and probably one of the creepiest fears that I have, is if you've ever been at the ocean and you're walking on the docks and you're on a boat and you look into the water, my fear is something is going to be just underneath the surface looking back up at me. That is like the creepiest feeling ever. But I'm not afraid of the ocean. I think the ocean is beautiful. I love to go and see it. I just don't always know what's underneath it. That's the part that freaks me out. Well, I have a pretty clear mental picture of what that looks like. I definitely didn't want to take that fear and create an art piece on that. So I went with the fear of kind of like the fear of in the dark or something watching you, or the unknown, and I translated that into the classic fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood. I really wanted to go for a traditional illustration, like old looking illustration for this piece. And immediately I thought I want to do this in watercolor. A lot of times I'll do art in Copic markers, but I wanted to do this in watercolor. So I pulled out my watercolor paper, which I use the Arches watercolor paper for this. I'll put links in the description box below for any of the supplies that I use if you guys want to check that out. But the only problem with using a really thick watercolor paper is it's really hard to transfer any kind of sketch onto that. Usually I'll use my light box, and I was going to use my light box for this, but I've rearranged and reorganized my studio, and I can't find my light box. I don't know where I've stuck it. So I found the cord to it, but I can't find the actual light box. So I had to go with plan 2, to take the sketch, print it off, and then apply a really dark graphite onto the back side. So you take a pencil and you just scribble on the back and just cover it with graphite. And then you lay that paper on top of your watercolor paper, and then you use a pencil or something a little bit with a point, not too sharp. And you just draw around it, and it pushes the graphite onto the paper. It's an easy hack for those of you who don't have a light box or actual transfer paper. You can just do it that way. So I transferred the sketch over, which I didn't record that part, but I did the sketch on Clip Studio Paint digitally because I was just playing with ideas and I came up with it and I liked it so much, so I printed it off. Anyway, moving along. But as you can see, before I even applied the sketch over there, I wanted to play in a little bit of the background color. So you'll see that work into there. Something to think about when you're putting in your background color and you're going to paint on top of that is most watercolor is transparent. So you're going to see some of your shadows and color blocks through that. A couple of tricks that you can do to help avoid this is you can, one, use masking fluid, which is kind of this goo that you paint on the paper and it kind of dries, and then the watercolor doesn't seep underneath that. And then when you're ready to, you can just rub it off like boogers, I don't know, and things like that. Or you can just be really careful about where your water is. But I decided not to do that because I wanted a really shadowy light effect in my piece. So I took a risk, and I wanted the colors to kind of pop out and hope that they would look like shadows. And I really think I achieved that effect. Sometimes you just have to test it out, go for it, and see what works best. But I knew some of the background parts would be too dark. So also later on, you'll see I incorporate gouache. So gouache is a type of watercolor. It works similar to watercolor, but it's really, really opaque. So you can lay the white in there and it just covers up everything. But I'll talk about my flaw with that theory a little bit later in this video. I wanted the whole piece to have the sense of depth. To get a really good depth into your picture, you want to really focus on your background, your main point of focus, and your foreground. And I have a couple videos where I talk about that, and I'll try to remember to list them at the end of this video. I use the forest to kind of create that illusion of a distant background. So you'll see my trees are different sizes and shapes and placed differently on the paper. So as they get farther away from me, I raise them higher up on the paper. To create the foreground, you'll see in a little bit that I put in a lot of shrubbery and bushes that kind of go in front of my main character. But I also wanted to have the fear element, the is someone watching her. And so I wanted to put a kind of silhouetted version of the wolf, or kind of the big bad wolf, not wolf. I always say wolf. I have a phobia of saying wolf because I always say it wrong. I didn't want him to be creepy, and at first he looks really weird. I fix him in the end, and hopefully he turns out okay. You'll also notice that I didn't ink this drawing in. A lot of times I do ink it in, and when you ink something in, it's automatically, I can't talk today. It's automatically going to make it look more 2D dimensional than 3D. So I opted to not do an use ink to ink in my drawings, but later on I will darken some of my lines with paint with a really tiny little thin paintbrush. So let's talk about the one hiccup I had using gouache. So gouache, being very pigmented and highly opaque, is really great for covering things up. But I did notice that if I use my white, so I wanted to, because there was a creepy factor in this picture, I wanted also to have a factor of friends or hope in this picture. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but so I created like a little gnome character hanging in little globy lights, and you'll see in the picture that I outline her first, or kind of base shape her first in white, so that hopefully the colors will stand out. That's what was in my mind. But because it's gouache paint and it just wants to mix with everything, when I tried to put the colors on top, I found it was really hard to be able to get a solid, good, like deep red, instead of it kind of turned more pinkish. So, yeah, that didn't work as well as I wanted, but I was able to work around it. The point in this picture is that the world is full of scary things that want to make you nervous or fearful. And sure, we can focus on those, but there's always the opportunity for us to look for the good, look for the help. When we're so overwhelmed with fear, sometimes it blinds us to the good things that are going on. So if you're going through a hard time, maybe it's not exactly a phobia, but maybe you have anxiety, or you're battling with depression, or you're just on a really tough part of your journey right now, I just encourage you to look around and find the beauty in life, find the good in life. For me personally, it's been a tough couple of months, and it would be really easy for me to get my focus off of the blessings that I have in my life. Look around you and find what it is that brings you hope and joy, whether it's friends or family, or for me, it's my relationship with God. And if you're like, dude, I'm totally cool, I'm not in a bad place, awesome, be that light, be that joy for other people. I want to let you know how you guys can be a part of the next YouTube Artist Collective. I'll leave a link in the description box below where you can go over to our Facebook page, and pretty soon, we usually do it a week or two after the collective, will put out a call for ideas and suggestions for a new theme, and then we'll put out the poll and you guys get to vote. Also, if you are wanting to join in the fun and you haven't gotten a piece ready for this theme, it's okay. You don't have to have it posted now. You can always post your artwork on the page or tag us in your photos on social media. We love to see it. I'm going to post a linked list of all the YouTube Artist Collective members in the description box below. Check out their videos. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future videos. If you're interested in purchasing the original art piece for this, I will leave a link to my Etsy shop in the description box below. But thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this little adventure. And as always, God bless you guys. Keep being creative, and we'll see you in the next art video. Bye-bye.